continuing on in our show, we are headed to California, where it is a state in the United States for all of our international viewers. People of California are headed to the polls on June 2nd. These are called primary elections, but for those of you who follow politics in other countries, it maybe is better understood as kind of a first round election because the people independent of the party who clinched the first two spots in this, quote, primary, which is also called a jungle primary, head to the next round, which will be in June. And there are over 23 million registered voters in California, and they're going to be voting for who they want their next governor to be, the attorney general, insurance commissioner, members of the California legislature, and much more. Again, and then they will head to the polls in November, where the final vote will be cast by the people of California. This race has been watched quite closely, and there's been a lot of news coming out of California. Of course, California is the state with the largest population in the United States. And not only that, but the GDP of California is $4.2 trillion, which makes it the fourth largest economy in the world. That is nothing to sneeze at. And so to break down what is at stake in this upcoming race, we are honored to be joined by Ramsey Robinson, who's a social worker and a gubernatorial candidate for the Peace and Freedom Party. Ramsey, welcome to the show.
Oh, happy to be here, and greetings from California, y'all.
Incredible. We can see the rays of sunshine that we are not getting.
Missing, yeah.
That we're missing here on the East Coast.
On the East Coast, yeah.
Amazing. Well, Ramsey, you're running
$4 trillion economy will do that.
Oh, yeah. We got to just produce more. We might get better weather.
Yeah. We're not working hard enough over here.
Yeah. But Ramsey, you're running for governor in California. You're running against 60 people, which is wow. And this includes former host of Fox News, couple millionaires, a former cop. Ramsey, why are you running in this race, and why do you think it's important that there is a socialist option on the ballot?
Oh, well, to put it simply, California has only 194 people, 194 billionaires that are hoarding, sitting on $1.2 trillion that the working people of California have generated. And the Peace and Freedom Party is in a struggle, in a fight to make sure we get our wealth back to meet all of our needs. Because in California, these challenges that working folks face, and there's 40 million of us on this side and just 194 on the other side, the fact that millions of us are behind on rent, that tens of thousands of us face eviction, that 2.5 million of us in California don't even have health insurance. Well, this is because of these billionaires that are hoarding all that money. And I mean, you said it correctly. And actually, it's not a millionaire that's running. There is a billionaire that is running. I mean, these billionaires, they are the ones that are responsible for the challenges that we just kind of laid out. And there's so many other challenges that we can start to unpack here. So we are really getting our power together to challenge these billionaires. You mentioned that a cop is running. Actually, it's a sheriff. We know that the police, the sheriffs, they're the gatekeepers of this system. They're the gatekeepers of the poverty and the exploitation that we experience every day. So we need our own party. And I'm so glad you mentioned a socialist party, because the Peace and Freedom Party is the only party on the ballot that has ballot status that is socialist, which means very simply that the people of California that create all this wealth, we control it. That this economic and political system, we're fighting for one where oppressed people, working class people like us, we have that political power, and we simply plan that $4 trillion economy to meet our needs. And we're not alone in thinking that this is what California needs. I mean, 74% of Californians agree that it's time for a third party that's independent from the Democrats, from the Republicans, and of course, these billionaires that the Democrats and the Republicans serve. And, this is very personal for me. I'm not only the Peace and Freedom Party candidate for governor of California, I'm also a mental health social worker. I work in Bayview, Hunters Point, Shout Out. It is one of the last Black and brown communities in California. And I'm seeing so clearly my fourth year being a mental health counselor that the trauma, the anxiety, the depression, the grief and loss that the children that I work with, well, it's due to this system that we live under, which is called capitalism. And this is the system that the billionaires of California are supporting. So we're really part of not just a political movement, but a mass movement to really put pressure on these billionaires to fight for a California that works for us and not just them.
Oh, God, I love to hear capitalism called out. And that's why it's great to have a socialist running. But of course, one of the arguments we'll often hear, and a lot of people do end up arguing this, even among the progressives on the left, right, is that California that there's these two Republicans that could end up winning the first round, and then that would guarantee that there would be a Republican governor if that happens. And so, in light of this, many are calling for progressives to drop out and put their support behind Democrats Xavier Becerra or Tom Steyer to ensure that a Democrat finishes in the top two so that it's not a guaranteed Republican win. So how do you respond to that argument, to these people who say, look, we agree with your program and everything you're saying, but to defeat the Republicans, leftists like you, Ramsey, need to drop out?
Well, we say to that if the Democrats are concerned about a Republican getting in office, it's on them to thin the field. That we are the only socialist voice, the only voice that's saying that we need a system that puts people over profit and not profit over people. And I think this really exposes that the Democrats are more concerned, the ones that are running, probably all of them, are more concerned with their political life, their political career, than really what's best for California. And so there's no way we can drop out. Like I said, 74% of Californians know it's time for a voice like this, right? And so we also know that it's up to us, a third party, to continue to fight, to continue to gather steam. And the Peace and Freedom Party is one of the fastest growing political parties in California. And we're really in a life and death situation here right now. And again, this is personal to me. I'm in my 40s. I remember when Clinton was president. He passed a crime bill that disproportionately put folk like us, Black and brown people, in prison. And Joe Biden wrote that. We can go to Obama as well, obviously another Democrat, who deported more immigrants than Trump did during his first term, that bombed Black people in Libya. So just in California, to bring it back to here, the Democrats have had the super majority in both the House and the Senate for decades. And still, half of California is behind, is living paycheck to paycheck. 15 million of us are drowning in medical debt. So y'all know that old adage that it's insanity to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So we need to stop doing the same thing that we've done, which is voting for the Democrats here in California, and finally say, now we have a party, the Peace and Freedom Party, that is founded in 1967, anti-war from the jump, a Black liberation party from the jump, co-founded by the Black Panthers. They were also socialists. And we have this political vehicle to wield our power to make sure that we make California better. And lastly, I'll just say, this is propaganda. This is propaganda from those same billionaires that want the status quo to stay the same because it works for them. And the majority of Californians are saying now, we don't want the status quo. We need something new in California. We need a party that is for the working people of California, and that's the Peace and Freedom Party.
Well, interestingly enough, as you say, the Democrats have had a supermajority in California before. California is also portrayed as, one of the most progressive states. It is one of the wealthiest states in the United States. Yet, at the same time, it does have one of the highest poverty rates. And it accounts for 25% of the homeless population in the U.S. And as you also pointed to, it also has the highest concentration of billionaires and ultra wealthy. So how did California become such a symbol of the country's inequality crisis? How did we get here?
That's so precise to say that it's a symbol, because it's really a mirror, California, and what's going on in the inequality, what's happening all across the nation. And California just shows that so starkly and nakedly. The fact that on one hand, We, as you mentioned to open up the show, we have a $4 trillion economy in California, the fourth largest economy in the world. We have economies bigger than other nations, right? And we have 194 billionaires that have so much of our wealth. And on the other hand, California also leads the nation, not only in wealth, but in poverty and unemployment. So we have to ask ourselves, how did this inequality come about? And it's really because we live in two Californias, one that's run by these billionaires who do nothing for that money that they are sitting on, right? But call all the shots on the most basic necessities of what we need, right? This is a California where we have these huge corporate landlords. We're talking about homelessness that snatch up, let's put their names on blast: Invitation Homes, Blackstone, American Homes for Rent, snatching up tens of thousands of homes all throughout California, sitting on them, right? They're sitting empty, many of these apartments and homes, driving up the rent, evicting us, and then pocketing that money. And with that money, gambling with it, like a casino chip on Wall Street. And so we also see that in the employment crisis that we have in California, where we have huge corporations, McDonald's, Walmart, Amazon, right, that they break us off just a big enough crumb for us to come back to work the next day. And meanwhile, half of us in California are living paycheck to paycheck. So our campaign is really addressing this inequality, and we are reducing the power that these corporations and these billionaires have. Because when we bring about a rent freeze, right? Can you imagine if just 20% of your paycheck went to the landlord? That's what we can do right now in California with the California Emergency Services Act, right? This is going to be a challenge to those huge corporations. When we implement our guaranteed union jobs at $30 an hour, and we have mechanisms to set that at $30 an hour or more, well, this is going to be a challenge to these huge corporations that exploit us every day. And we're also seeing that all throughout history, it's been the playbook for us is we need to struggle for this in the political arena, in the ballot box, but this also has to spill out over into a mass movement. And that's what the Peace and Freedom Party, that's what the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which I've been a proud member for years. This is what we are doing to really fight back against the evisceration of our rights and the fact that California is so unequal.
No, I mean, it's definitely a microcosm, or I don't even know if a microcosm, because California is so big it could be its own country, but it's definitely something that we see replicated across the country to such an extreme degree, everything that you're talking about. But I also want to ask you about one last thing here, and that is the fact that the California governor's race is taking place amidst this major attack to democratic rights across the country, specifically attempts by Republicans to undermine Black voters and majority Black districts in states like Louisiana and Tennessee. So I want to ask you, how do you understand these kinds of maneuvers, and what does it say about democracy in the U.S. right now?
Oh, well, how do we understand these maneuvers? Well, these are maneuvers by that billionaire class that is behind the evisceration of the Voting Rights Act, which is not only racist, which it is, but it really exposes what's going on behind the scenes. That these billionaires that are, using through the right wing, tearing down the Voting Rights Acts, well, they're trying to transfer more of the wealth that we create to them. And we see it by the way that they fear Black and brown voters. That's why they're doing these awful things, right? And tearing down these, because they know that Black and Latino voters, the vast majority of us are in favor that challenge the wealth that they've stolen from us. And to be specific, 95% of Black voters, well, we're for the minimum wage being raised. Like the overwhelming majority of Latino voters and Black voters, we believe it's time for free healthcare, right? Fully free universal healthcare, no copays, no deductibles, no premiums, right? And the majority of both of us, sections of voters, Black and Latino, well, we think it's time that we start to tax these billionaires to get what we deserve. And in all three of these examples, all three of those would take that money that they've been hoarding from us and put it back in our hands. So they're scrambling, as they've always done really for 50 years now, to make sure that they can try to break our power in the voting booth to make sure that they hold on to that. But it's not going to work, And I think it's really important that we just unpack this a little, because we see what works. It was the civil rights movement multiracial solidarity, getting out in the streets, foot on the pedal for years that got the Voting Rights Act in the first place, a mass movement of people. And as soon as that started to subside, well, that's where the billionaires and the right wingers, that's when they started their attacks on our voting rights. So I think it also points to the fact that, yes, go to ramseyforgov.com. If you're in California, vote Socialist. We have a whole slate of candidates with the Peace and Freedom Party, and let's use that power that we have in the ballot box. But we also need a mass socialist movement, right, that puts the economic and political power in our hands to make sure that, eventually we have our own system that makes sure that we have the power as voters. And you know what we do with that power. We'd ensure that with as much money that we have, not only in California, but just all across the nation, that we have all of our needs met.
Well, Ramsey Robinson, you have filled me with hope amid these dark times, and we will definitely be following up to see what happens in California. Once again, the fourth largest economy in the world. So very interesting, and thank you for your analysis here with us on the freedom side.
Hey, thank you for giving us a voice, and shout out to everybody in New York City and all across the nation. Take care, y'all.